Welcome to another episode of I'm Dying to Tell You. This is Dr. Mark Goulston, facing his mortality. I think I'm still going to be here for a while, but we're still working that out. What I wanted to share with you was, have you ever felt that you weren't good enough? That you just didn't measure up? Well, years ago, I used to feel that I wasn't good enough because I didn't perform well enough. I didn't make enough money. I didn't achieve enough. But even when all of those happened, I still didn't feel good enough. And what I discovered is it wasn't about performance, achievement, or money. It was that I didn't feel that I have sufficient goodness inside me. And then I discovered something called the Jungian shadow. The Jungian shadow are the parts of your personality that you're not particularly proud of, that you try to keep hidden from the world and hidden from yourself because they fill you with shame. And everybody has a Jungian shadow. Even Mother Teresa, she even talked about the shame of her impure thoughts. And I realized that my Jungian shadow has a bunch of traits that I'm not that proud of. I'm capable of feeling jealous, envious, chip on my shoulder, grudge holding, feeling sorry for myself, not feeling inwardly that happy about someone else's success who's a friend. But being a therapist for many years, I realized that everybody has this Jungian shadow. And when I realized that everybody has it, what I realized is it doesn't matter what you believe inside. It doesn't matter what you think. It doesn't matter what you feel. What really matters is how you act. And that you can have all those feelings and all those beliefs inside, but if you don't act on them, you're good to go. A couple of years ago, I delivered a sermon to a church, Thad's Church. You can find it, of Goodness and Mercy, Thad's Church, Mark Goulston. And it's a very inclusive church because I attend it even though I'm a Jew. And they're fine. Everyone is welcome there as you are, whatever you believe. And I shared this parable about Jungian shadows that everyone has. And it's the parable of Saint Peter being on break from the pearly gates. And Jesus goes over to St. Tom and says, Tom, I need you to take over the pearly gates and check people in, or turn them away. And Tom says, I don't know how to do this. And Jesus said, they think a lot about me. So just ask them, who is Jesus? So Jesus goes away, and a few hours later, he comes back and he says, so Tom, how's it going? And Tom says, I really think I've got this thing figured out. And Jesus said, great. Who'd you see? And Tom said, it was a little bit like an afternoon from Disneyland. And Jesus said, what? And he said, well, the first person I saw seemed like the fairy godmother from Cinderella. I asked her, who is Jesus? And she said, Jesus is love. He's kind. He's fair. And Jesus said, what'd you do with her? Tom says, well, I sent her through. And Jesus said, who else did you see? And he said, the next person was like Geppetto from Pinocchio, the bushy mustache and the glasses. And I said, who's Jesus? And he said, Jesus is strong, is just, is powerful. And Jesus said, well, what'd you do with him? Tom said, well, I sent him through too. Jesus said, you see anyone else? And Tom said, yeah. And Jesus said, what's the matter? Well, I don't know if I want to tell you about the last person. Jesus said, tell me about that person. And he said, it was like an afternoon from Disney. This was like a villain. pointed black hat, pointed chin, gold tooth. And I asked him, who is Jesus? Tell me about Jesus. And he said, Jesus is vindictive. Jesus is mean. Jesus is cruel and petty. And Jesus said, what'd you do with him? And Tom said, I sent him back. And then Jesus looked at Tom with all his wisdom and all his warmth and patience and said, but Tom, that last person saw me exactly the way I am. What he failed to see was my daily efforts to not be that way and my huge efforts to not act on any of that. So I hope what you can take away from that and what I shared earlier and what I took away from all this notion about a Jungian shadow is that we all have these thoughts and feelings and biases, but what really counts is how we act on them. So cut yourself some slack and let yourself off the hook. As long as you're not acting on any of those thoughts and feelings, you're good to go. And you're good to go, and you're good enough.